If you've ever stumbled into a Nintendo Switch subreddit, you might have seen a post like this one a few hundred times.
Guys, you'll never believe this hidden gem I found on the Switch. It's called Tetris.
The Switch has approximately 7 million games on its eShop, and a few of them are actually not terrible. This good to garbage ratio leads to some fans discovering quote-unquote hidden gems. A hidden gem, as the term implies, is supposed to refer to a diamond in the rough, or in this case, a solid indie game deserving a chance in the spotlight that's unfortunately buried by all the crap. And there certainly are some legitimate hidden gems on the Switch, games that don't get nearly enough recognition despite their high quality Please Play Horus, but some enthusiastic consumers might stumble into games that they believe to be hidden gems despite them not being hidden at all. Like, I've seen people legitimately describing Undertale and Cuphead as hidden gems. Guys, they're in Smash, what the fuck are you talking about? So in this video, I'll be sharing my thoughts on 3 of the biggest hidden gem cliches, because I needed to justify paying Arlo for that cameo. There are certainly other offenders, but these are some of the most common ones I've seen. Yes, I am aware that people call Celeste a hidden gem ironically, but you can't talk about hidden gems without talking Celeste! And speaking of Celeste, a short hike is a small open world adventure with the main goal of climbing a mountain. You accomplish this by collecting golden feathers, which function as a stamina bar and can be purchased or found through exploring, but the draw of this one is in its sense of freedom. You're encouraged to play at your own pace, discovering all sorts of side quests and minigames along the way. Hell, you don't even have to climb the mountain, it's just one of many other activities, but it does tie into the game's rice grain of a story. You play as a bird named Claire, who's trying to reach the peak for some sweet cell phone signal. The game doesn't tell you why, but once you reach the top, you're hit in the face with a sudden brick of exposition. See, Claire's mom was undergoing surgery the whole time. They have an emotional conversation, boom, heartstrings tugged. Look, can I just say, considering the breezy vibe this game is going for, I think this conclusion is way too abrupt and it gave me genuine whiplash. It isn't foreshadowed well and feels really tacked on. Thankfully, it's such a brief moment that you can pretty much ignore it, but it stuck with me after playing for all the wrong reasons and I had to address it here. It doesn't spoil what comes before it, but it doesn't work for me whatsoever. But the point of this game isn't the story, it's the exploration, and okay, I know I'm gonna make somebody mad here, but I don't really like this one, I'm sorry. A short hike isn't bad, in fact it's perfectly fine. It has gorgeous visuals and sound design, flying controls wonderfully, and I had some scattered moments of fun, such as with this ball spanking minigame. I also appreciate that it's a compact experience, something that I wish more games would be. I like when games end. In addition, it launched in late 2020 on the Switch. It originally came out in 2019, but only for PC and Mac, so it's pretty obvious that this relaxing little sandbox resonated with Switch owners during the nutty year. I appreciate that, and I get why people enjoy it, but I just kind of don't. I felt pretty bored playing, and part of that had to do with the game's central goal. Climbing the mountain is the hook here, even if there's so much more to do, but it's just too quick and easy to accomplish. The game tells you that you need 7 golden feathers to reach the top, though it can be done with less, meaning you don't have to do a ton of exploring in order to quote-unquote win. It takes about an hour. The NPCs hype up this trek to be much more than it is, which set me up for something a bit grander. And yeah, I know that the hike being short means that the game's title is accurate, haha, but it just feels like any other side quest rather than the main attraction. I think this could have been remedied by both requiring more golden feathers to reach the peak and by making the hike just a tad lengthier. There are some sections where you need to jump into water baths or run by fires to thaw out your golden feathers before proceeding, but this is pretty much the only challenge and these save spots are all really close to each other. Why not space them out more, force the player to be thoughtful with their movement, add in more gaps and climbs? I totally get that making the hike too challenging would go against the game's peaceful spirit, but the lack of difficulty for this title moment did disappoint me and bring down the overall experience. But then we get to all the other stuff. There are a lot of quirky conversations with NPCs, and the map is tightly packed with quests and activities to find, but I didn't enjoy much of that either. It was certainly cool to discover things, and I especially enjoyed the conclusion to the seashell collecting side quest that I won't spoil, it's really funny, but a lot of times all I found was more money or feathers, and once I climbed the mountain, I didn't really care for much of either anymore. A lot of the game is built around the idea of just playing for the sake of playing, which I didn't really get into personally. There are other uses for the money, and you do find items to help you progress, such as a compass, a shovel, a pickaxe, stuff like that, but I found it all to be quite unremarkable, and honestly, I was pretty eager to put this game down. I feel bad because I do see the appeal. I want to like it, but it's just not for me. Again, I'm not arguing that this game is bad, but considering all the hype and praise it gets, I end up feeling quite let down here. A Short Hike was developed in only 3 months, while developer Adam Robinson Yu was working on another game, and this feels like a 3-month side project. I'm glad people love it, and I'm especially glad it resonated with so many during some dark times, but I just wasn't one of those people. However, if you're looking for a tiny world to sink into for a few hours, this game is only $8, and it's definitely alright for that price. But I can't recommend it much beyond that, and my god, people, please stop comparing this game game to Breath of the Wild. Just because a game has exploration doesn't mean you have to immediately compare it to Breath of the Wild. I see everybody comparing this to Breath of the Wild, and I honestly think it's a little much. Am I the crazy one for feeling this way? Please let me know. Moving on, the next hidden gem is Bug Fables. Bug Fables is a sequel to Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, or at least it might as well be. If you ever played one of the first two Paper Marios, you know what to expect here. Tons of silly dialogue, RPG mechanics that are simple to understand but more complex than they let on, a battle system featuring quick-time button presses and joystick flicks, a badge system that changes the way the game plays depending on which ones you equip, a story that sends you on a sprawling journey across a large map, that sort of thing. It is legitimately impressive how effortlessly this game plays like those that inspired it, while still including ideas and mechanics that give it its own identity. This isn't a clone, it's an homage done brilliantly. The main protagonists, V, Leaf, and Kaboo, are all really interesting and play off each other nicely. There are no other partner characters, but these three are so engaging and so well written that I didn't mind at all. The game is also surprisingly challenging even in its base difficulty setting. Enemies are tough and most require a fair bit of strategy to murder effectively. You have to be careful with how you order your team in combat too, because whichever insect you place in front of the line will do the most damage, but will also be the most at risk when it's the enemy's turn to attack. I find it easiest to rely on Kaboo, who's the powerhouse of the three, but this means that I was constantly putting my strongest guy in the most danger. Meanwhile, the quick time moments are unsurprisingly satisfying to pull off, and the three characters have a wide array of attacks at their disposal, making for a battle system that easily outclasses those that inspired it. But aside from combat, the game's dialogue is top-notch and the story goes to some very interesting places. It's set in the land of Bugaria, which is well defined thanks to its wide supporting cast, and features a variety of plot detours. I did wish for more compelling villains though, and honestly I struggle to even remember who the game's main antagonist was, but that's a minor nitpick and the game doesn't struggle much for it. This still manages to feel like a massive and lively world regardless, and it was difficult for me to put down. If I had some larger complaints, they definitely include the visuals and exploration. The landscapes are bright and appealing and the character designs are solid, but I never really warmed up to the simplistic art style. Some of these backgrounds are so flat that they look legitimately bad, and not in a charming minimalistic way either. And in terms of exploration, things harken back to those original Paper Marios as well, perhaps to this game's detriment. Much like its spiritual predecessors, areas often feel very linear and hallway-esque, which can make for some rather dull overworld moments. But these criticisms don't even remotely get in the way of what's an otherwise exceptional experience. This game packs in tons of content for what it is. I'm not really a side quest kind of guy, so I only did a few of those, but despite that, it still took me almost 30 hours to beat the game's 7 chapters, and I didn't lose interest once. All in all, I'm barely scratching the surface of everything there is to see and do in Bug Fables. There's also a great leveling system, very reminiscent of TTYD, a card game that provides its own fun and challenge, tons of unlockable goodies to find, and so much more. But point is, if you're even remotely into those original Paper Marios, I'd say that Bug Fables matches and even exceeds them at times, and it's easily my favorite of the 3 games we're looking at today. Which brings us to Celeste, the big daddy of hidden gems, the game that Redditors still won't shut up about, and for good reason. One of the most revered indie titles of all time, the recipient of handfuls of rewards, and a prime example of video games as an art form. I think it's just okay. Yeah, I said it, I think Celeste is good. Not great, just good. Well, bye. Okay, that isn't entirely fair, and it isn't true either. Celeste is great. It is a crispy, well-designed 2D platformer with excellent controls, featuring one of the best stories in the whole genre, with superb music and a clean visual style. It's a game designed for players of all skill levels to at the very least finish, and it has my utmost respect. But while I recognize its many strengths, it just wasn't really for me. And I mean, hey, maybe I'm just broken, but I will say I do like a good 2D platformer, whether it be your Marios or your Donkey Kongs or your Sonic Manias or whatever, all great fun. But I've personally never been a fan of the platformers where death is an inevitability, you know, Super Meat Boy and the like. And well, in Celeste, death is an inevitability. Even if you ignore the extra challenges and the strawberries and such, you will die, and you will die a lot. The game even encourages you to take death as a learning experience and to keep trying anyway. Failure is baked into the story in that way, which is impressive and is quite unlike some other tough as nails platformers that sometimes feel like they're mocking you for f***ing up. Even still, these games just don't really appeal to me. Yeah, it's probably because I suck at them, but I simply never feel compelled or enjoy the experiences enough to fight through my own suckage. It's a disease, unfortunately, and there is no cure. But I will say that despite that, Celeste is easily the greatest death is inevitable platformer I've played, and it's all thanks to the incredible storytelling. Madeline is a compelling, relatable character, and her internal struggles are illustrated expertly. The sections where you outrun Battleline are some of the most well-executed Cosmic Mario type challenges I've ever encountered in a game, and some moments still stand out in my mind, one personal highlight being the climax of the Celestial Resort. And the final challenges climbing up the mountain are so well paced and memorable that it makes up for some of the moments I was less invested in. Because that's the sad truth, I was just not very invested in a large chunk of this game, mainly in the middle. I first played it a couple years ago, started losing interest in Chapter 3, and put it down after Chapter 4, and I felt the same happening during this playthrough as well. While the game has superb pixel art and some truly beautiful moments, I find some color choices to be a bit drab and uninteresting, such as throughout all of Chapters 3 and 5, which did contribute to my growing disinterest. And while Madeline's base movement is satisfying and the game adds in new mechanics as you progress, I find quite a few of these mechanics, such as heavy gusts of wind and poison that forms beneath you on platforms, to be more frustrating than fun. To be clear, the game is built around these mechanics, so I'm not saying that they're bad, just that I personally don't enjoy them. But all of that aside, what I do love most about Celeste is the care that creator Matty Thorson put into the various gameplay options, especially those focused on accessibility. The game has a robust assist mode that gives you the ability to do things like play with infinite dashes or with invincibility, and while I didn't use this mode aside from just testing it out, I truly appreciate its existence. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, the game provides speedrunning clocks for players who are into that sort of thing, and Thorson has said that they developed the game with speedrunning in mind from the beginning. I just love hearing this sort of thing, honestly. Nothing is better to me than a game with as many options as possible that caters to as many different audiences as possible. However, while I absolutely suck ass at the base difficulty, assist mode felt like too much of a crutch for me personally, so I did avoid using it. Which is silly and maybe contradictory, I know, but I did manage to beat the game on my own regardless. I started having more fun when I stopped hunting down strawberries and only focused on getting to the end, and while I did love those final moments, and while I appreciate so much about this game, it just never ended up clicking with me. In fact, if I may quote Neryl, a YouTuber who is way better at this whole YouTube thing than I am, in regards to his completion of Hollow Knight,
I stopped playing it near the end and only went back to finish it now, years later for this video. And the main satisfaction I got was the knowledge that I don't have to play it again.
And while I didn't dislike Celeste as much as he disliked Hollow Knight, I 100% share this sentiment. I'm glad I played it, and I'm glad I got to see what the ultimate hidden gem is all about, but I'm mostly glad that I'm finally done with it. In the end, Celeste is a game that I admire more than I enjoy, and I think that's totally fine. It just doesn't resonate with me, but I hope it resonates with you, if you're able to find it, that is. It's so hidden that I'm not sure you've ever even heard of it. One more thing. At the end of 2020, the game's creator revealed that protagonist Madeline is transgender after discovering their own trans identity during and after Celeste's development. They laid this out in a blog post, which I'll link to in the description. I highly recommend reading it, as playing the game with this knowledge added a completely new layer to the story. I think it's beautiful that Thorson was able to learn more about their true self through their art, and I believe that it makes for an even more engaging narrative as a result. I feel that I'm not the best person to speak for them or their experience though, so again, the blog post is in the description, and I'll leave it at that. Actually, while I'm being sincere, let me end with this. I know I've been cracking wise about the whole hidden gem thing. As I said, it's a big joke that some folks on the Switch subreddit call just about any game a hidden gem, and it can get irritating when they do it without using the search bar and realizing how not hidden these gems really are. But at the same time, speaking gently for a second, maybe it's not very nice to mock people who are just excited about games. The hidden gem thing gets annoying, but it's good when people like things. It's nice when people are so invested in something that they want to share it with others. And the Switch is a great system with a wide audience, so cliches become inevitable when discussing it with so many people. And while making jokes about the cliches can be funny, being cruel to people for something this inconsequential, which I see quite often, isn't as funny. It's mean and unnecessary, and it sucks, you know? I just think we should all aim to be kinder, even if we're anonymous online. Alright, thanks for watching. If you don't mind, I'm gonna sit back and wait for people to laugh at me for being sincere on the internet. Bye!